17 proposed amendments to the Texas Constitution are on the ballot for all registered voters in Texas this November, ranging from tax breaks for homeowners and businesses to laws codifying key social and political issues.
And as your local election headquarters, we want to make sure you know exactly what it is you're voting for before you head to the polls. And to that end, Josh Hoggard's joining us now to break a few of those down. So Josh, what can you tell us?
Yeah, so over the next several days, we'll be breaking down each and every one of the 17 proposed amendments to the Texas Constitution, looking at the pros and the cons and analyzing how it may impact you. And of course, if you remember back to the most recent legislative session in Texas, lawmakers promised billions of dollars in property tax cuts for Texans. But now it's up to Texans to decide which ones will pass. Beginning with Proposition 13, increasing the homestead exemption for all Texas homeowners. Now, the homestead exemption, or the amount of your home's appraised value that can't be taxed to pay for public school, is currently set at $100,000. If Proposition 13 passed, it would bump that number up to $140,000, meaning more of your home's value won't be taxed. Now, according to the Texas Tribune, for the average homeowner in Texas with a home that's valued at the state average of just over $300,000, Proposition 13 would amount to an annual tax cut of just under $500. Now, while property tax cuts are typically pretty popular among lawmakers, some critics argue that Texas should be doing more to limit local tax rates and spending to prevent tax bills from rising. Next, we'll look at Proposition 13, further increasing the homestead exemption for elderly and disabled homeowners in Texas. Now, currently, that homestead exemption for disabled homeowners and homeowners over the age of 65 is set at $10,000, and that's on top of the $100,000 homestead exemption for all Texans. Proposition 11 would increase the exemption for elderly and disabled Texans from $10,000 to $60,000, meaning if both Proposition 13 and Proposition 11 pass, elderly and disabled homeowners would be exempt from paying school taxes on $200,000 of their home's value, nearly doubling their savings on property taxes. Now, like Proposition 13, there hasn't been much pushback, though some critics of the measure argue that broad exemptions like this aren't sustainable. Now, homeowners aren't the only ones that could see tax cuts in this new wave of amendments. Businesses are set to see a cut to property taxes as well if voters choose to pass Proposition 9. This amendment, if passed, would exempt up to $125,000 of the inventory and equipment owned by a business from property taxes from school districts, cities, or counties. Now, current law allows businesses not to pay taxes on property worth $2,500 or less. This amendment would save Texas businesses nearly $200 million each year, something supporters say would contribute to economic growth. But those opposed to this bill claim it could be applied at a business at multiple locations, creating a sort of loophole for any multi-site establishments. Now, we'll take a look at the rest as the week goes on, so make sure that you join us tomorrow as we continue breaking these down. And, of course, if you want more information on the proposed amendments, you can find all of that in our voter's guide on our website, Texomashomepage.com. Yesterday, we looked at 3 measures that would reduce property taxes for homeowners and businesses in the Lone Star State. Today, we're going to tackle the rest of the proposed tax laws, and there's 7 of them, so buckle up. We've got a handful of propositions that deal with more tax exemptions for Texans in specific situations, such as Proposition 5, allowing property tax exemption of animal feed held as inventory for retail sale. Now, supporters of Prop 5 say animal feed is tax exempt at every other stage of its life cycle, so this keeps it consistent, while critics of the proposition say it gives animal feed sellers an unfair advantage. Also, Proposition 7, giving property tax breaks for spouses of armed service veterans who died in connection with their service as determined by federal law. That aligns Texas with federal policies. Now, at last check, no campaigns are currently in opposition to this proposed amendment to the Texas Constitution. Then there's Proposition 10, allowing a temporary tax exemption for homes destroyed by fire. If passed, the amendment would create a process to temporarily lower taxes after the owner of a home destroyed by a fire applies for the adjusted tax bill for the year which the fire occurred. Proposition 10 also has no campaigns opposed at this time. Finally, Proposition 17, preventing the property tax values in Texas border counties from increasing due to border security infrastructure on private land. Supporters of the measure say it prevents undue tax burdens on property owners, while critics argue that it incentivizes more border security infrastructure on private lands. Now, also on the ballot this November are 3 proposed amendments that are aimed at prohibiting the state government from creating new taxes on certain assets, such as Proposition 2, the capital gains tax ban, prohibiting the state from taxing people or businesses on profits or potential profits from capital assets like investments and real estate. Supporters of the measure say it doubles down on previously banned state income tax, while those who oppose it claim it creates a permanent barrier for future legislation. Proposition 6, the securities tax ban, would prohibit the state from creating new taxes on securities transactions like stock trading and from taxing those who operate in security markets like brokers or dealers. Those in favor of Prop 6 claim it affirms limited government, free enterprise, and private property rights, while those who are against it claim it too creates future roadblocks for lawmakers. Finally, Proposition 8, an inheritance tax ban. It prohibits the state from taxing an estate or when an estate or inheritance is transferred. And although Texas currently doesn't have an inheritance tax, the proposition would keep it that way, although it won't eliminate other existing taxes associated with an inheritance. Opponents call the measure unnecessary, but those in support of the proposition say it allows Texans to transfer wealth without tax penalties. Now, tomorrow, we'll take a look at 3 specific areas of statewide funding that are also on the ballot. Now, of course, if you missed yesterday's breakdown of the proposed property tax cuts, or if you want more information on any of those proposed amendments, you can find all of that over in our voter's guide on our website, Texomashomepage.com.
Ahead of early voting beginning on Monday for the November election, we've been breaking down the proposed amendments to the Texas Constitution, all in an effort to make sure you know what you're voting for when you cast your ballots in the coming weeks.
Now, there are 17 total propositions for Texans to consider. We've already talked through 10 of them, and Josh Hoggard is joining us now to take a closer look at a few more regarding a few funding propositions. Josh?
Yeah, that's right. We're continuing our breakdown of the 17 proposed amendments to the Texas State Constitution ahead of the November 2025 election. Now, over the last few days, we've touched on propositions aimed at changing tax laws in Texas. Now, today, we're taking a look at some proposed funding for state infrastructure and research. First up is Proposition 1, creating funding for the Texas State Technical College program. TSTC has 11 campuses across the Lone Star State, offering associate's degrees and certificates in 48 programs across 9 industries like engineering, manufacturing, IT, and aviation. Proposition 1 would create funding to upgrade campuses and expand the college in the state. Now, this comes after many employers in Texas have noticed a decline in skilled workers, leading Governor Greg Abbott to make workforce training a priority during the last legislative session. Those in favor of Prop 1 claim it would help close the statewide skill gap, while those against it say it would limit government spending oversight and transparency. Now, perhaps the most critical natural resource in the entire Lone Star State is water. Of course, we here in Texoma have seen firsthand what kind of impact a lack of water can have. Now, the water supply in Texas is facing a number of threats, from increasing demand due to population growth, aging infrastructure, even changing weather patterns and increased drought. Now, one of the proposed amendments is meant to address the water supply across the state. Proposition 4 would dedicate a portion of sales tax revenue to the Texas Water Fund, a proposed $20 billion investment over the next 2 decades, about $1 billion per year beginning in 2027. Those funds would be dedicated to fixing aging pipes, developing new water sources, flood mitigation projects, and supporting conservation efforts, all aimed at solving a water crisis in Texas before it ever happens. Support for the measure is widespread, as those in favor claim it will help bridge the existing funding gap, while some who oppose it claim it doesn't leave space for private sector solutions. Now, one final area of funding that state lawmakers are hoping to address with a constitutional amendment involves the establishment of a research institute aimed at preventing and treating some of the most devastating and degenerative cognitive impairments. Proposition 14 would provide $3 billion in surplus revenue from the state to establish the Dementia Prevention and Research Institute of Texas in order to study degenerative cognitive conditions like dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, with the ultimate goal to learn how to treat and prevent those diseases. In addition to the initial investment, The institute would receive up to $300 million each year. That money aimed at attracting the nation's top researchers, physicians, and experts to come to Texas. The measure has received bipartisan support from lawmakers, including 100% of voting Democrats, nearly 80% of Republicans. So now we've got 13 down, only 4 more to go. Tomorrow, we'll conclude our look at the 17 proposed constitutional amendments for Texans, tackling 4 propositions that deal with key social and political issues.
Today, we're wrapping up our in-depth look at each of the 17 proposed amendments to the Texas Constitution that all Texans will be voting on in the coming days. Josh Hoggard joins us now to break these last 4 propositions down. Josh?
That's right. Today we're wrapping up our breakdown of 17 proposed amendments to the Texas Constitution that registered voters across the Lone Star State will decide on this November. Now, we've tackled 13 proposed amendments over the last 3 days. Now we're down to the final 4, all of which address social and political issues facing Texans right now. First up, Proposition 12, aimed at changing the makeup of the State Judicial Conduct Commission. That's an independent state agency responsible for investigating allegations of judicial misconduct. Now, currently, the commission is made up of 6 judges, 2 attorneys, and 5 government-appointed citizens. If Proposition 12 passes, that commission would eliminate the 2 attorney positions, replacing them with 2 more citizens, as well as some other procedural changes. Now, those in favor of the change, they say it promotes transparency and accountability, while opponents of the measure say it could politicize judicial discipline. Now, over the last decade or so, voting rights have been a hot-button issue across the country, from election integrity to voter ID laws. One of the proposed amendments is aimed at addressing voter requirements in Texas. Proposition 16 would add language to the Texas Constitution explicitly stating that persons who aren't citizens of the United States cannot vote in Texas. Although citizenship is already required to register to vote, lawmakers who support the measure claim it prevents local governments from allowing residents who aren't citizens to vote, while those against the measure call it redundant and unnecessary. Bail reform is a topic that has been referred to as a priority for lawmakers over the last several years, and one proposed amendment aims to reduce violent crime by changing the current bail laws. Proposition 3, if passed, would require a judge to deny bail in certain cases for individuals accused of committing certain felony offenses, including murder, aggravated assault, and indecency with a child. Prosecutors would have to show that bail would not prevent the accused from being a flight risk or a public safety risk, and defendants would still be entitled to representation during bail hearings. Lawmakers in favor of Prop 3 say it's needed to reduce crimes committed by those out on bond, while those against the measure say it will add to the problem of overcrowding in jails, all while not truly improving public safety. Now, the last proposed amendment to dissect is Proposition 15, a ballot measure lawmakers say is aimed at solidifying the rights of parents in the state of Texas. Proposition 15 would amend the state constitution to affirm that parents are the primary decision makers for their children. The measure would enshrine into law that it is a parent's responsibility to nurture and protect their child, as well as their right to exercise care, custody, and control of the child, and make decisions regarding the child's upbringing. While these are rights currently outlined by federal case law, lawmakers argue it protects parental rights for Texans, since case law can change and even disappear over time. However, critics of the proposition question how it ensures that a child's voice is heard. Now, early voting gets underway on Monday, October 20th here in Texas, and as your local election headquarters, it's our hope that you're informed on each and every issue when you cast your ballots. So make sure you check out our voter's guide with our full breakdown of all 17 of these amendments, plus what's on the ballot for you, where you are, and where you can vote. You'll find all of that and more over on Texomashomepage.com.
Very important information to know before you head to that ballot box. Josh, thanks for breaking all that down for us.